Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and I've got a really cool guest today, one of the greatest players to pick up a Telecaster, where with Will Ray, of course, was one of the Hellecasters. If you don't know Will, he's born in Virginia. He's a musician, producer, and writer and recording artist, and he's been living in Asheville, North Carolina since 2005. For 22 years, he lived in L.A., where he worked as a session player with artists like Michael Nesmith from the Monkees, which we'll talk about that, Thomas Dolby, Joe Walsh, Carlene Carter, Steve Earle, and Tom Jones. That's some major artists there, man. His songs have appeared on TV shows such as Oprah, The Tonight Show, and the NBA Basketball Championship. This guy doesn't play around. In the early 90s, as I said, he founded the Hellecasters along with fellow country pickers John Jorgensen and Jerry Donahue. Their albums and DVDs have earned them wide praise from musicians and press around the world. Their debut album was awarded Guitar Player Magazine's Best Album and Best Country Album Awards in 1993. Will actually has several Fender Telecaster model guitars named after him, and he also has currently a G&L. G&L currently offers two different Will Ray signature model guitars. In addition, he has a BBE signature guitar effects pedal called the Mindbender. As a writer, Will's also been a regular contributor to Guitar Player magazine since the mid-90s. He's had several regular monthly columns in the magazine, including eBay Strategies, Auction Block, and eBay Prizes. He also has two popular guitar instructional DVDs. He also currently writes a column for Premier Guitar every other month called Bottom Feeder. And he's released two solo albums, Invisible Bird and Mojo Blues. And to learn more about Will, you can also go to his website at Will Ray, it's WILLRAY.biz, and you can also visit him on Facebook. And if you want to hear Will's partner in the Hellecasters, John Jorgensen, you can listen to his interview, which took place in episode number 180. Just go to everyonelovesguitar.com to check that out. Will, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here, Craig.
So what prompted you to move out to L.A., man, and what were you doing just before that, career-wise?
In L.A., I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, and so I was out there, and I was slowly getting sucked into day jobs, and at the time, I've only had day jobs during a 5-year span, and that was from the late 70s to the early 80s, and the last job that I had, I was working for the post office as a mailman, substitute mailman, and that actually, it paid so well at the time that I was able to save up about $12,000, and that's what enabled myself and my wife at the time, Gail, to move to Los Angeles.
What prompted you to do that? Like, what was the motivation?
I think the motivation was it's now or never. It's like, I've got the money to do this. Am I going to be a professional musician, or am I going to be a mailman the rest of my life? And so that's, everybody kind of reaches a point like that somewhere in their career where, the money aspect of a day job sometimes determines what you're going to do with your life. And I didn't want for that to happen. So I decided to quit the post office, and we moved out to LA in 1983, and we just kind of went for it.
Awesome. So once you got out there, how'd you start finding session work?
Well, I first joined an organization called Musicians Contact Service, and started getting a few gigs through them. And it's just word of mouth. It's very, very difficult when you move to a new town to to get work. I think it's the same in LA or Nashville or wherever. And you basically have to start at the bottom and do what I consider to be the 7-year plan. I think it takes 7 years or so for you to kind of be paying your dues and starting at the bottom, working your way up before you get into a position, I think, where you can have more work, better, good work coming in, sessions and touring and stuff like that. And that's kind of what happened to me. From 83 until 1990, I played at any given time, I could handle playing in 5 original bands, doing showcases, and 3 bar bands that would play on the weekends and stuff. And so the showcase bands, the original music bands, they would only play, once or twice a month. So they weren't like full-time things. So I just would juggle 5 of those and 3 bar bands. And every month I was playing probably 5 to 7 nights a week, doing that kind of stuff. And eventually you meet enough people, 1990, that's when the Hellecasters started. And Hellecasters just kind of started on a whim. It's like, I remember Jerry Donahue and I were sitting at the Palomino Club in North Hollywood, and we were watching.
That was a gay bar, if I'm correct, right?
No, that one wasn't. There was another place in North Hollywood called the Rawhide.
Yeah, that was
a gay bar. And all the good country musicians at one time or another would play there just because they paid well and they were a very, shall we say, enthusiastic crowd.
Yeah, they love country there. That's what I've heard several times.
You and I were sitting at the Palomino during one of Ronnie Mac's barn dances, and we thought, we could do one of these things, just get up there and guitar around on stage, and just play stuff, some instrumentals and things, and then he thought, well, it'd be nice to have 3. So instead of 2 people doing that, so John Jorgensen's name came up, and so we called him, and John was with Desert Rose Band at the time, so we kind of we all got together at a rehearsal one time just to go over some songs, and we just ended up doing a one-off gig at the Palomino, and people just came out of the woodworks for some reason. It's like it ignited something in all the guitar players. They wanted to come out. We had people from Fender guitars coming out, and so at the end of the gig, we thought, well, we'll do another one in 6 months. So 6 months later, we did the second gig, and keep in mind, we're just doing this for fun. By the third gig, that's when Michael Nesmith came out, and he said, hey, I'm starting a label. You guys want to record on it? And we said, sure, and so all these other bands that, were doing original music out there, we were all trying really hard to make it. And it's like we were just spinning our wheels. Hellecasters just kind of started off as a band for fun, to get our rocks off, so to speak. And that's what ended up, I think, being something bigger than the 3 of us individually. And we just, I just kind of built my career, I would say, from that.
Did you know you had magic? Like did you individually all feel like, wow, this is really cool when you played?
Not really. I mean, we were able to, when you're playing with another artist, you're probably playing at about 5 to 10% of your potential, With the Hellecasters, you could play within 70 to 80% of your potential and if you were brilliant enough, you could play at 100%, But we all, we got to do what we really wanted to do. We would write instrumentals. We wrote our own music. First we started off doing a few cover tunes and stuff. But then by the second album, we were writing our own music, and it just kind of morphed into something that had a life of its own.
Yeah. That's cool how it started out like on a whim, though.
Yeah, but something, that's the way most magic happens, I would say, on a whim.
Yeah, sometimes it's when your intentions are deliberate, it doesn't work the way you want to.
You can't really you can't plan a whim, You can't plan magic. You can plan to get people together, and everything, but you never know what's going to happen until that moment, And sometimes you can get together, like Blind Faith. That band is an example of having superstars in there, and it just couldn't take off for whatever reason, So, what the Hellecasters taught me was, don't try so hard. It's like, just do what you really, follow your bliss, follow your dream, do what you do best, and eventually the cream will rise to the top.
I like that. Don't try so hard. I think there's a lot of merit to that in everything. Like sometimes if it doesn't happen organically, it's just not meant to be, man. Not that you shouldn't work hard, but don't try so hard to make it successful. It'll either take off or it won't. You got to work hard, but you can't push it sometimes.
You do have to try a lot of different things. I had a shotgun. Like, it's like for the first 7 years, every year, at any given moment, I was in 5 showcase bands and 3 bar bands at the same time. And I was doing stuff. And then I also, somewhere along the line in there too, I ended up in 1990, probably in 1988, I think I got my first 8-track machine. So I started having a home studio. By 1990, I had upgraded to a 16-track. And so then at that point too, from 1990 on, I had enough of a name where people could come to me and say, hey, I hear you're a producer. I've got an album I want to do, or I've got a 3-song demo I want to do. And so now you're able to stay at home and not even get on the freeways, the congested freeways, and have people come to you, and you walk 20 feet to your recording studio and you're at work, and you can work all day there too, so it gives, starting in 1990, I would say I had more opportunity to do different things, because the goal is to keep doing your art as long as you can. And that means you've got to be able to make a living at it. And if you want to make a really great living, then you have to figure out, okay, how do I get to the next level?
Sure. How did you wind up hooking up with Joe Walsh, and what work were you doing? What work did you do with Joe?
Joe and I met on, we were doing a soundtrack for a movie. Might have been the Beverly Hillbillies movie. It was a terrible movie. But I think we met doing a song, Honey Don't, on that, and that was one of those sessions where they would hire a big name like Joe Walsh to come in and be on the track. At the time, he was he had been with the Eagles and everything. He's pretty much a household name.
Yeah, still is 50 years,
sure.
40 years later. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, you just happen to randomly wind up doing a track together. Any cool stories from working with Joe, or was it all business? Or
not really. It's when you're working with artists, you're basically there as a team player, and you're there to make them look good. So I was there in the mode of really providing a good, solid rhythm electric, for him to do his lead work on,
Sure.
And I can't remember if he ended up singing on that or not, or they might have had somebody else singing. I don't know. So.
How about with Tom Jones? How'd you connect with him, and what kind of work were you doing there?
Again, it was a soundtrack, for a movie. I can't remember the movie offhand, but I think it was a Disney animated thing. And what I remember about him is he came in with a cold, and I thought, most singers, they'd like cancel a session, if they had a cold or something. But he was the consummate professional. It's like he just kind of would keep clearing his throat, and he just worked through it and did his thing. And I was impressed with that because I'd seen, you run into a lot of artists that are like prima donnas, but he didn't seem that way to me. He wanted to do a good job, and he just came in and did it, even though he had a cold. And and that's the thing about the difference between a professional and an amateur, to me, is that an amateur can have moments of brilliance. They can be at 90% of their potential one night, but then the next night they could be at 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think with a professional, they're going to stay in the 80 to 100% range. They could have the cold. They could have the flu. There could be a lot of things going on. A professional has learned over the years how to work through that kind of stuff. And the old adage, the show must go on. It runs true still to this day. The show must go on, and you've got to be able to rise to the occasion, no matter how bad you feel.
Sure. I've interviewed two other players that have played with Tom and actually toured with him as touring band. One was a bass player and another guitar player. And both of them, the number one thing they talked about was his iron work ethic, the same thing you're talking about right now. So that's he is the real deal,
Yeah. I mean, he's not going to cancel a concert because he's got a cold or anything like that. But he really, you can tell he's sang so much in his career that he's got the chops. Even if he's got a cold, you could wake him up from a deep sleep and he would be able to nail a note.
Sure.
I mean, he's just good at his craft.
And you had mentioned Michael Nesmith. Did you work with him outside of him producing the Hellecasters?
On I think in the early 90s, we did what we call the Hellenez tour. You know, it was Hellecasters and Nesmith. You know. Hellenez, we call it. And so the Hellecasters would open the show for him. Then the Hellecasters would be his backup band.
Oh, right. That's interesting. So you got to play all night, man.
Yeah, we got to visit all of his hits and stuff, and it's Michael Nesmith is a very interesting fellow. A lot of people don't know this, but like his mother invented whiteout. And
right, I've heard that.
About $50-some million from that.
Yeah,
probably in the late 80s or something.
Let's talk. Hold on a second. There's a lot of young people listening to this that don't know what whiteout is. I don't think whiteout is liquid paper. They call it now. You know, it's like and they don't use it anymore because nobody writes.
Right.
But it used to be something like, if you're writing and you made a mistake, you just put it over it.
Michael Nesmith he had vision. And like, for instance, some people think he was one of the guiding forces behind getting MTV off the ground because I think he had done a early video called Elephant Parts, and he was helping to pave the way for music video channels and stuff. And so he had that vision, I think, in the late 70s, early 80s. And once he inherited his mom's money, then he started Pacific Arts. And that was a video as well as a music company. Now, Pacific Arts, Michael Nesmith owned the North American rights to Ken Burns' The Civil War series. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Okay, so you'd think, wow, I mean, he had vision. He knew this was going to be a big hit. Unfortunately, PBS wouldn't pay him. And so that's what ended up taking down his company, Pacific Arts. And it took down our second album with him, you know. And so, and this is also kind of interesting. You know, he filed a lawsuit against him. Well, 10 years later, the lawsuit got settled, and he won like $52 million from that. And so he's one of these guys that just kind of attract situations into his life where he has lots of money. And, you know, and that's something that, he's always been the most well-off of the Monkees. I knew guys that had played with, like, Peter Tork, you know.
Yeah.
And all the other Monkees, they were, like, really struggling, you know. He didn't have to struggle. And that gave him an autonomy that was that let him explore a lot of different things. I can remember in the early 90s, we were visiting his office, the Hellecasters, and to do something, sign something. And he said, "Come over here, Will, I want to show you this." And he goes over to the computer. He says, "This is going to be huge." right now I'm on my computer and I'm talking with a guy over this new thing called the internet, and so
Wow.
he was always on the cutting edge of stuff, and he's the type of person. If I owned a record company, I probably would have hired him to be an A&R person or something. Just because he can see trends and he can see what's coming down the road, and that's what you need with a company. So in that sense, I think he's really brilliant.
He's still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do work with him now?
No, I haven't. I haven't worked with him since the '90s, but he was always an interesting guy to work with.
Yeah.
And he had a fan club base that was, even in the '90s, he had a lot of fans, and they were some of them were crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just seen some of the people that would come to the concerts, and he would also tell us stories he told us a story of when on a Monkees tour, early Monkees tour, there was this guy named Jimi Hendrix that was opening for them. And it's like these, kids had to be accompanied by their adults and stuff a lot of times. And so you had these kids going to see the Monkees that were like, 12, 13, 14 years old. And then you have this guy, Hendrix, playing this crazy stuff really loud and, using, setting his guitar on fire and using a can of lighter fluid, acting like he's peeing fire on it, and it's like, it freaked out so many of the mothers that they pulled him from the tour after I don't know, 3 or 4 dates or something. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's an odd combination, Hendrix opening for the Monkees,
Yeah, but it was Chas Chandler was handling Hendrix, I think, at the time. And Chas was a master of shock and awe. It was a shock and awe moment, and it actually created such a buzz about Hendrix. It's like, well, who is this guy that got thrown off the Monkees tour?
Okay.
More about him, you know what I mean?
Sure. So he was pretty calculating himself.
Yeah.
Smart.
I think it was a smart move.
Yeah, real smart.
Shrewd.
Hey, how did you licensed music, but you didn't just license it to like, a commercial. You're on Oprah, Tonight Show, and the NBA championships. How the hell did you get those placements, man? Those are terrific.
Well, I was lucky in that early on, I started my own publishing company, and I had it. Originally, it was administered by a lawyer, but then I signed with Bug Music. Bug Music was based in Los Angeles, and it was a hip little company, and they licensed all of the Hellecasters stuff as well as my own catalog and everything. And I was lucky to have a company like that where you have people working for you pitching songs to organizations, because an organization like the NBA is going to come and they'll be approached by different publishing companies like Bug Music. Bug Music is not just a publishing company, but they also administer other people's publishing companies, because most artists probably own their own publishing companies, and most writers do, and they just license it out to different organizations. and that's kind of the way that kind of stuff works.
And did they do the 50-50 split? Is that how they worked? Because I know that's how it works today.
Yeah, it depends on. It all just depends on what kind of deal you have and what kind of clout you have.
Yeah.
If you have hits under your belt, you're going to have more clout, and you might be able to administer something under 50%.
Gotcha.
Like 20% or something, 25%.
Right.
So, but generally, those kind of things are anywhere from 10% to 50%, or even 100%. I mean, the Beatles didn't know it at the time, but when Brian Epstein signed them to Dick James Music, Dick James owned 100% of the publishing.
All right.
In other words, the income from the songwriting income from all of their songs was split in half, right off the bat. And the Beatles only got half. Dick James got the other half.
Right.
He owned all of the publishing. That's one half of the pie, and the other half of the pie is the songwriting. And Lennon and McCartney, and they owned the other half if they wrote a particular song. So it wasn't until once John Lennon learned about that, he was furious, and that's when they started, I think, Northern Song. And they started their own publishing company. But you got to keep in mind the Beatles were unprecedented in modern music history, because before them you had people like Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. They were not writers. They didn't play their own instruments on records and stuff like that. The Beatles changed all that. And when the Beatles came along, they were saying basically to every young person out there, hey, you can do it all. You can just pick up a guitar, play your own songs, write your own songs, sing your own songs. When the Beatles started off, they were considered marginal singers by their record company, EMI, and so George Martin, when you listen to their early stuff, George Martin had them double track all of their vocals, meaning they sang along with it a second time to make their vocals sound fuller and more interesting. So it's interesting.
That's wild, yeah. It's interesting to talk about your guitars, that you've had signature guitar models with both Fender and G&L. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and if there's any things you can't talk about because of any of your deals, that's totally cool. But I was curious if you could talk about the differences in dealing with both companies, the differences between both guitars, and if possible, which guitar is, quote, better in your opinion, and why? And I don't know if you could talk about any of those things.
Well, with Fender was the first company I had a signature guitar with. And before that, John and I were both with G&L, and both of us wanted to do signature guitars with them. But there was a falling out between John and I and G&L. And so at that point, Fender had approached us, and we said, hey, let's just go with Fender. So John and I went over to Fender. Jerry Donahue was already with Fender.
Gotcha.
So, and as soon as John went over to Fender, that's when G&L decided to release his signature guitar finally.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
That's the way some of these companies are. And so that's why you'll find some John Jorgensen models out there. I forget how many that they made, but I don't know if it was John or Fender or a combination of both made them stop, and at that point we were totally with Fender, and we had a 5-year contract with them. So we had to honor that, and it was fun being with Fender. We got to really design our dream guitars, and each of us did that, and our first models were called the Hellecaster models. They did a Hellecaster model that was a Will Ray one, Jerry Donahue, and John Jorgensen one.
That's pretty cool that like everybody in your band got a signature guitar, man. That's really freaking cool.
And it was cool. And these were all made in Japan, which I really like. Japanese built guitars. They have an attention to detail that is incredible. And so we had our guitars. They were a limited edition series, which meant that they were going to make them probably for a year or two. And so they ended up making them, I think, for about 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And it was fun. It was fun to, I remember I had a conversation once with Seymour Duncan, and he said, boy, I asked him, what do you think's the best pickup to have? And he said, I think the Jazzmaster, just because it's got such a large casing that you can do a lot of different things in there. You can make it a double coil if you want. You can make it a big fat single coil. You can put ceramic magnets in there, and this and that. And so when it came time to design my guitar, I said, well, I think I want to have Seymour Duncan do my pickups. And at the time he said, what are you looking for? And so I took an extra pickup I had that was a G&L ASAT special pickup, which is a little bit smaller than a P90. And I said, this is the sound I want to have with these. And so he designed a pickup. I think he designed pickups probably for all three of us. Jerry, they already did some Jerry Donahue pickups for him. So, and that's how we wound up with the first edition of the Hellecasters guitars.
That's really cool. So, do you prefer G&L as a guitar over a Fender, like today or in general, or?
I think they're both really good guitars. The G&Ls, I think, give you a little more bang for the buck.
In what way?
G&L doesn't really have a custom shop. And when they build a USA model guitar, it's basically being put together by really good craftsmen. And so, in my opinion, you get the quality of like a Fender custom shop guitar in a regular G&L guitar. A custom shop guitar is going to cost you anywhere from about $3,000 to $5,000. And you get that in a guitar with G&L, a USA model would cost probably about $1,500 or so,
Wow.
So, I'm just saying, it's bang for the buck.
You're in Asheville, right?
Yeah.
You know Jerry Lida?
Yes. Jerry Lida and Music City.
Yes. I couldn't think of the name of his store. Man,
Music store.
Yeah, he will fight tooth and nail about what you just said. In the same thing, he has there's no reason to buy a Fender when it comes to guitars, man. But he almost literally verbatim what you said. I interviewed him maybe like, I don't know, about 250 episodes ago, but that was very prominent in our conversation because I don't think he carries Fender. I think he only carries G&L.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been in there in a couple of years, so I don't know what's going on with them. But I think he kind of carries a little bit of everything now.
Oh, does he? Yeah, because he was pretty dead on about, man, there's no, he said the same thing pretty much. They'll build you a guitar that's like a Fender custom for $1,500 or $2,000.
Yeah, because when you would order a Will Ray model G&L, they're going to build it. You get to choose how you want to build. I mean, they would build some just and stick them in stores, but you could, when you go to order one, you would order it the way that you want. You know, what radius fingerboard? What do you want? You want maple or you want rosewood on there?
Yeah, I've never played a G&L guitar. I'd love to get my hands on one just to check it out.
Well, they make two different kinds. The USA ones, they're the ones that are made in the USA. And then they have some that are made in Indonesia. And my signature model had an Indonesian-made one as well as a USA-made one. With the USA, you could choose however you wanted it to be. The Indonesian, they would just make, usually every year they would make it in a different color, and some of them are burnt orange and some of them were sunburst. And I don't know what other colors you couldn't specify colors with the Indonesian, but they were a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Like I think my USA model probably would cost maybe $1,600 to $1,700, whereas my Indonesian one would be about $600 retail.
But man, even $1,600 for a signature guitar is unheard of with Fender or, that's a really good value.
Well, but keep in mind that was when we were doing, first we did the Japan-made limited edition
with Fender.
With Fender. Then after about 2.5 years, we did the custom shop.
Oh, okay.
And they were completely different.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like, for instance, my limited edition one, the first series, was always it was a gold leaf on the whole body. On the custom shop one, I had 3 different colors. They had gold leaf kind of installed over a painted body, and, to show designs and stuff. And so the custom shop ones were probably in the $2,500 to $2,700 range. So
still pretty reasonable for a custom shop guitar, although it was in the 90s. That's that's 25 years ago. Yeah. So that'd be like probably 4,000, 4,200 or something like that. Call it $4,000 probably around there. Yeah. So that's cool, man. But that's very cool that you actually had custom guitars with 2 companies. Not many people had that.
Well, I've been. I think Jerry's been with a lot of different companies. So is John. Like John. Jerry was with Peavey for a while. He started with Fender. Jerry had a signature model with Fender for a long time, for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before the Hellecasters came aboard at Fender,
Oh,
so
wow.
and even with Fender, he had like a he had a bare bones one that would kind of be in the $500 or $600 range, and then he had his custom shop one that would be in the probably 2,000 to 2,500 range.
Sure. Wow. Well, that's cool, man. Very cool.
I'll tell you what. While we're talking about signature models, the one guy who I would love to see his royalty statements on his signature guitar is Les Paul.
Yeah.
There are Gibson must make 50 different Les Paul models, and Epiphone probably makes another 50 to 75. You know what I mean? At any given time.
Absolutely.
And so just millions and millions of Les Pauls have been sold.
Yeah.
And I would think that, that alone, he would just be rolling in the dough. But here again, I don't know what kind of deal he had with Gibson. And back then, in the early days of endorsements, they didn't know as much as they do now about what you can get. It's like the Beatles when they would do lend their name to be on lunchboxes and dolls and stuff. The merchandising thing, they didn't have a clue. They would get 2 cents on the dollar. Nowadays, people would probably get 10 cents, 20 cents on the dollar.
Sure. Yeah, that's wild. I haven't thought about that with Les Paul. You're right. Hey, where in Virginia did you grow up?
In Richmond.
Okay, so that's a major city.
Yeah, I was in the suburb area when my dad bought his house. He bought the house, I think, in 1948 or 49, and it was just farmland around. It was a farmland across the street from us and everything. About 4 or 5 years after he bought it, they built a country club across the street. So, it was, we had easy access. We were a member of the country club, but we could just literally walk out our front door and cross the street, and could pick up like the fourth hole, play the front nine or the back nine or something.
That's cool, man. What was your childhood like growing up there?
I was kind of a shy kid, and I kind of kept to myself. I wasn't. My high school years were pretty unremarkable. I kind of prided myself in the fact that I wasn't in any club or activity. 4 years of high school, it was like I didn't care for any of that stuff. And
primarily because you were shy, you think?
Well, I was shy. Plus, I just didn't have any interest in doing stuff with other people that much. But eventually, after high school, what happened was I went in the Army, and I did a stint in the Army, and I was sent to Vietnam. So when I got wounded in Vietnam, and I was in Vietnam in 69 and 1970.
Holy shit.
When I got back from Vietnam, I kind of made a vow that that's it, man. I don't want to be doing shit that I don't want to do anymore,
Wow.
And so that was a big decision for me. And I wasn't into music yet then. I played some in high school, but I was pretty much a terrible guitar player. But my second year in college, that's when the music bug really hit me. And, I can remember what I was doing at the time. It was like we had put up a Christmas tree in what we call the green room, and I'd been helping to decorate it and stuff. And I remember my brother had this Grateful Dead record. It was the first Grateful Dead record that was live. It's called Live Dead. And I put that thing on, and we always had an old Gibson LG Zero guitar laying around. And I picked that thing up, and I just started jamming along with it to a song, Turn On Your Love Light. And I just kept putting that thing on. And after 2 hours, my fingers were really sore, had blisters. But man, at that moment, I knew this is what I want to do. I want to play music. And from that moment on, it was like everything in my life was geared towards playing the guitar. I dropped certain classes and got my credits down. I only had 12 to 13 credits. And I was under the GI Bill at the time. So they were paying me to go to college, and I was kind of living at home. And so I would use a lot of the money. Back then, people don't realize how inexpensive, college could be.
Yeah.
I was going to a community college. It was $60 for an entire quarter, and so I would be making, I would be having money coming in. I was always thinking about guitars.
Yeah.
And I tried never to have classes in the afternoon. So I just had morning classes that would start at 8. And then I would come home, do my homework, and then I would play for 8 hours. And I made it a practice. I had the discipline back then to work 8 hours a day, just learning guitar, playing guitar, and everything was geared towards that. I'd even bought a German-made turntable called the Thorens, and that would, at the time, records were all you could learn from.
Yeah.
My record company, my record player would be able to go down to 16 2/3, which is half speed of 33 1/3.
Yeah,
and that's how I learned licks. It also had a pitch control on it, so I could tune the record to my guitar, and that's how I learned how to play. That was one of the best investments I made, was a really good tool, a record player that I could do anything on, learn anything.
Man, you just said a bunch of cool stuff. First of all, I've never heard of a turntable that did that. That is phenomenal. Wow.
It's a high-end turntable. And when I got out of the Army, I took some of the money I had saved up, and I just bought a really, really nice high-fidelity system. I spent about $5,000, and I just had really great components. I had Crown preamps and power amps. I had Bose 901 speakers. I just went the whole 9 yards for everything. And because at that time, I really wanted to listen to music very well. I had electrostatic headphones, and eventually, when I started playing, I had a great system for learning on, and it was really nice to be able to decipher licks off of records, and that's how I would learn scales. That's like when I would listen to Jerry Garcia and Peter Frampton, for instance, both of them would play quite a bit out of the Mixolydian scale. And that's how I learned the Mixolydian scale, was listening to those guys, doing that. And I figured out the different scales just by the long way around, But it gave me a different perspective of music, just the way that I figured things out. I took the long way around. It was a very curvy trail through the forest. But by the time I got to the other side, I knew a lot about music just from that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It used to be so gratifying, when you went out and you bought a new components and stuff like that. And that doesn't. My kids come over here and I got like speakers, like a normal, like I have a really good. And they're like, "Why do you have these big speakers?" And I'm like, they don't get it, It's just different now, But so, what made you go into service? You just like. Was your dad in the service or something? Because that's a big commitment to go over to Vietnam,
I tell you this: when you're 18 years old, you're kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And you really don't have a lot of horse sense. And my reasoning at the time I was in college. I was going to Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, and I just couldn't keep my mind on the work. I kept looking at the news and seeing Vietnam, and I thought, I don't want to beat my brains out in college for 4 years, then be sent to Vietnam and get killed. I'm going to just join the Army now, get killed and get it over with. And that was really my game plan as an 18-year-old. I just didn't really have much sense back then. And I just thought, this will be an adventure. And it was. It was quite an adventure.
Wow. Well, how cool is that, man? Hey, well, first of all, thank you for your service, man.
Well, thanks.
Really, thank you. That's a very cool thing to do. And so then you got on the GI Bill, which is great. And you got to buy a great stereo system and some good gear, which is really cool. Did you first get turned on to music over in Vietnam, like stuff like The Dead?
I think I was always into music. It's like, even when I was like 10 years old, I was putting together model ships and model planes, My older brothers, I had 2 older brothers and an older sister, and they would be playing music all the time. They had their own rooms and they had stereo systems. And so we lived in a big house. And so, but I could always hear their music. My sister would be playing, she would be playing a lot of Elvis stuff and Barbara Streisand. My brother Gaylord, he would be playing Peter, Paul, and Mary. He was really into the folk stuff. And I'd be hearing Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Kingston Trio. And he had a jug band that he was in. And so I got to hear music from a lot of different areas. And good music is good music. I still like to listen to really good music. I don't care where it comes from.
Sure. That's really cool, man. What kind of work did your dad do?
My dad was a doctor. He was a
awesome
pulmonary physician, and my brother Gaylord, he became a doctor also, and my mom was a nurse. So we have a lot of doctors in the family. I had an uncle who was a doctor. My grandfather was a doctor. Had in-laws that were doctors. So a lot of doctors in the family, a lot of free medical advice for me, from the friends.
Were your folks supportive of you in your music career?
Yeah, I would say they were.
That's really cool.
I think that I had an advantage in coming back, wounded from Vietnam in that I think in my parents' eyes I was very fragile, you know, and they would do whatever they needed to do to kind of help me. And that's what I needed in the first few years of learning to play guitar. I needed to live at home, go to college, and I just looked at it as that was a woodshedding time for me.
Yeah.
8 hours a day. And I would, I had the discipline back then to be able to do that. I don't think I have the discipline now to be able to do something like that. But once you have the discipline to learn your craft, no matter what it is, then you understand what it takes to learn other crafts, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So you can become a master of whatever you put your mind to, but you got to put in the hours. There's no shortcut to it. You know, it really comes down to how many hours total playing time you have a guitar in your hand.
Yeah.
And I'm a great proponent of keeping a guitar at work. You know, if you have a day job, and during your lunch break, picking it up and playing, because you can come up with some amazing things sandwiched between, working and working in the morning and working in the afternoon. You know, you get to switch gears, and I think that it helps keep you centered more when you can you have an outlet to feed your creativity, because everyone's got creativity. It's just, I think the problem with the world is most people don't really find what it is they really want to do and do it. And I think that's where most of the frustration of the world comes from.
I think a lot of it does come from that. I would agree with you.
Like terrorists, I think that they feel like, well, I'm going to become a terrorist because, there's no opportunity here, but you have to, it's up to every person to search and find what it is they really want to do, and I think most people settle for stuff, so.
I want to ask you a question about that, because you made a comment earlier that I thought was really, really brilliant, to be honest with you. At the age you made it, when you came back from the service and you were injured, you said, I'm never going to do something I don't want to do again. And, most people don't get that at 20. They have that revelation after, life has beat the shit out of them for 20, you get that at 40 or something like that, or 50 or 60 or never, and I was curious, to have that in your early 20s is, I think, really bright. And I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, you don't have that. Most people don't come to that conclusion.
Well, I think when I came back from Vietnam, I had experiences that would stay with me the rest of my life. I got to really stare death in the eyes, so to speak. And I knew that the reason I came back from Vietnam is because I really wanted to. I wanted to live. When I first went over there, I think I wanted to die, But once I was over there, I thought, holy mackerel, I don't want to die for this cause. If I'm going to die, I want to die for a good cause. And I think the best cause you can have is the freedom to do what you want to do. That's what I chose. When I got out of the service, I had a very strong desire to find. First of all, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know I love listening to music. So the first thing I did when I got out was I bought a $5,000 stereo system. That led me to wanting to play guitar again. And I went out at that point. I just started buying guitars, and I got in first playing folk again. A couple of years after I got out of the Army, I started with folk music, and so I bought a Martin D28 and a D1235, which is a 12-string. And so I started on those, and they're good guitars. And so I started on those. And then some guy I was playing folk music with, he said, "Oh, I'm selling this old melody maker." And at first he just wanted $25. Then when it came time for me to get it, he said, "Well, I think it's worth $40." So I paid $40, and at that point I was on my way.
Yeah.
I really like this,
But I think to have that, you know what I'm saying, though, to have that level of awareness at that age, that was a great gift Vietnam gave you, in a sense, because
Sure.
most people don't have that level. Do you have kids by any chance?
No kids.
I would. Okay. Because, kids, I didn't certainly have that. Not that I'm super aware now, but I certainly didn't have that level of awareness then. And I've always aspired to it as an adult, to be as aware as I can. And that's just a great thing to have that as a young kid. Will, if you had to go back to your younger self and give yourself advice, is there anything that you would have told yourself to do that you would have saved you time, money, anxiety, or helped you out?
Probably just I wish I would have learned guitar earlier. Like I played when I was 16, but I really wasn't very good at it. And I didn't get serious until I was probably about 22. At that point, I was dead serious about it. And I don't really have any regrets, but I do wish that when I was 16, I would have just maybe, I wish I would have bought a turntable then and started really listening to music the way it hit me when I was 22. But, it's like I just wasn't ready then. I was still,
you might have. Yeah.
I didn't have much sense when I was 18, much less 16.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
But the other thing I would tell myself is just, it's all good. I have a belief that you never. I think we reincarnate a lot, and that's our evolution. And so I don't think you can ever get it done, and you never get it wrong. So whatever you're doing, wherever you are, that's just where you are.
Yeah.
Just accept it and move on from there. And I'd like to think that I'm evolving as a human being still,
Yeah, man. I'm with you on that. Hey, I actually have some questions sent in from some listeners. So the first question is from a guy LT Wright. I think you sold LT a guitar, man. He sent me a picture. I think he had wings after you sold him that guitar. He was so happy. He sent me all the photos because I can't believe I got Will Ray's guitar. But he sent in a couple of questions, and the first question was, "What's your greatest tour moment or memory besides the Palomino?"
I think when we were playing, the Hellecasters were playing, I think in Montreal, and it was at some music festival, and there were seemed like it was about 50,000 people there.
Wow.
Wow, this is really a big crowd. and that was a big aha moment for me. And I was playing through you're at the mercy of what kind of backline they had, and I was playing through one of the twin reverbs that had the master control on it, but I got a decent sound out of it. But I just thought, wow, this is a moment I want to take a photograph in my mind, because that's it's always a big thrill to be playing to that many people.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you also want to know who's the best guitarist that you've played with?
The best guitar player that I've played with, I never really played with Danny Gatton, but we opened some shows for him. And for me, he was the best guitar player in my lifetime. And I think before him, it would have to be someone like Django Reinhardt. I think those are the two best guitar players that I've heard in my lifetime. And it was, I feel honored to have been able to play and open some shows with Danny Gatton, and be able to, after he died, he committed suicide, and we were supposed to do another bill with him at the Bottom Line in New York, I think.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up doing a tribute concert for him to help his family, because a lot of people don't realize that even with a name like Danny Gatton, that it's still, he was probably still barely getting by. You don't make a lot of money in this business unless you're like selling millions and millions of records and stuff. So he's probably the best guitar player I think I've ever played with.
Thanks. I have another few questions from Jeff McLeod. He sent some questions in. He said, how'd you have the idea for the slides on both hands?
The Hellecasters, in a word. Because in the Hellecasters, all three of us were pushing the limits of guitar. All three of us were pushing the limits of guitar. And for me, I had to come up with some new ways to be able to compete with John and Jerry, because they were just doing incredible things. And so I started playing around with the right-hand slide then, as well as the left-hand slide. And as you can see, I always keep them.
Yeah, I saw them.
Even when I'm not playing, just because it becomes a part of you more. If you pick it up and put it on only when you're going to play, it's sort of like a tool that you only use for playing. When it's on your fingers 24/7, then it becomes a part of you more, and I think you're able to do more things with it. It's more natural feeling instead of like, okay, I just put the slide on, now my finger feels heavy, and it just got me used to using both slides more when I could just keep it on my fingers,
Well, man, I think it's so cool too that 50 years into this thing, you still got that passion that you're like, hey man, I still need to get on top of my game. I can't let shit slip by. And that's so cool.
I love gear.
Yeah.
And like I've been, usually I at least get a guitar a month. Some I might get 2 or 3. And I don't go for the big fancy ones. I like to see what you can really get out there for not a lot of money. like under $300. And so there are a lot of, lately when I play on Thursday nights, at this club called the Asheville Guitar Bar, I only play cigar box guitars. And I have a collection of maybe 60 of those, and of which maybe 40 to 45 are stage ready, stage worthy. And I'm into that kind of stuff now, and I just love gear. I still have a passion for collecting stuff, like, wow, that's a cool guitar. I think, I'll see on eBay and I'll figure out now if I pull together money from both my PayPals.
And I get rid of this one.
But the thing is, it's harder for me to get rid of stuff nowadays. I collect more than I get rid of.
So spill the beans, man. This is like, you got several thousand guitar players listening to this. Spill the beans. What's some good deals out there that people ought to know about, that you're comfortable? I don't want to invade
I love Epiphone guitars. And like my two most recent Epiphone guitars, one of them is sort of a fake Epiphone that somebody actually, they took a neck and they tried their handiwork at inlay work, and they wrote in Epiphone with inlays.
Oh, good Lord.
Then they got some stick-on inlays and put it on the fingerboard. And so, and then to boot, they made the body look old. They relicked it, and it plays great, and it's fun to play. I ended up replacing one of the pickups. I love doing stuff like that. It's just finding something that someone else isn't using, and I'll make it my favorite guitar for that month or something, and I love doing stuff like that. So I love Epiphone guitars because I think you get a lot of bang for the buck with that.
Any particular years of Epiphone?
Not really. I think Epiphone's owned by Gibson, and I think they're really smart in the way they do different models and everything. Another guitar maker that I like is Cozart, Cozart.
Where are they out of?
And they're out of China somewhere, and they do a lot of interesting guitars. In my latest bottom feeder column for Premier Guitar, I show one of them. I have pictures of it, and then I play an MP3 of it. Then it's a guitar that someone took a Mexican blanket and somehow put it over the entire guitar, front, back, sides. And what's interesting is it's very lightweight, and it really plays and sounds terrific, And I think I paid maybe $112 for it or something.
Wow.
And it's just a great guitar. So I look for interesting things. There was another guitar I did a story on, and it was made out of a wah-wah pedal. Someone took a wah-wah pedal, like this, and they took all the guts out. They somehow attached a Fender neck to it, or a Squire neck, and then put a pickup in there. In addition to the pickup, they also put a built-in theremin. And so when you turn it on the theremin, you just put your hand over the theremin, and it goes, and it's just really wild.
It is wild.
And that kind of stuff, I'm always looking for interesting inexpensive things. Most of the guitars that I've bought in the last 10 years probably are under $150, you know. So I just look for interesting guitars, and then I see, well, how can I make this better, you know? And so I might change a pickup in it or change the bridge. Sometimes these people making cigar box guitars, they don't understand scale length, and so they'll have a 25 and a half inch scale neck, but they put the bridge too close to it or too far away, and so I have to relocate the bridge to make it, you know, stay in tune. But at that point, it goes from being an unusable guitar to a usable guitar.
Sure. And
I like that challenge.
That's good, man. You're just doing the stuff you like, you know. That's awesome. Hey,
that's what everybody should do, you know.
You know what? You're 100% right.
You're doing what you love.
Yeah, I am.
You know, I mean, I can tell.
Yeah, I am. There's a long story behind that, but yeah, kind of the same thing.
This is your passion, and I'm doing my passion. And what more could you ask for?
Yeah, it's less stress. Jeff he had a bunch of questions, but I want to ask you one more. He said, why did the Hellecasters stop playing together?
I think we just got tired of it, you know, at the same time. I think we all got busy. And John, I think, was in 96 or so, John started playing with Elton John. Mm-hmm. And that required, so we had to do Hellecaster dates or kind of around his schedule.
Yeah.
Jerry and Jerry went back and forth to England and doing sessions and stuff. I had my own studio at my house, so I started doing a lot of producing. And to be honest, to go out and do a Hellecaster tour, you know, you have to be prepared to lose money, you know, lose money in the sense of, you know, I can make more money doing session work.
The opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the Hellecasters was a passion. And so at some point, even the Beatles got tired of what they were doing.
Yeah.
And the only group that I've seen out there that hasn't happened to that much is the Rolling Stones.
Yeah,
they
that's what I was
just
thinking.
keep going and going because the core of the band, this is what they love doing. You know, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, they love the road, and you know, they get to travel first class and everything. So outside of that, most bands kind of have a shelf life of a certain amount of time, and once you're past your sell-by date, you're just going through the
I like how you put that, your sell-by date. Yeah, you know? I totally get it.
Everybody is feeling happy. We never really disbanded, and we still technically are incorporated, you know, because we have our own record company and stuff. But anyway, we just got tired of it. That's all.
This is going to be a really tough question for you, man. Most people, it's not as tough, but what you just told me, what's your go-to guitar right now? And what other guitars would round out your top three?
Guitar is, in any given moment, is usually the last guitar I bought. You know?
Yes.
It is. And it's because I'm playing it, it's like it pleases me for the week or it pleases me for the month.
I hear you, man.
Until the next one comes in, you know? And so there's no go-to guitar that I always go to the same one. It's always different every month.
Yeah.
And because I'm a great believer in being in the moment. And in the moment, you know, the latest guitars that I've gotten are those two Epiphones, and I really love them. And you know, and I'll play them until probably a couple more weeks, I might buy another guitar. And then I'll fix it up the way I want, and then that'll be my favorite for a while.
Well, man, if you ever have a liquidation sale, let me know. I'll drive up to Asheville.
Well, I had one. I had one during my divorce.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
We had to go through my inventory, and she actually she allowed me to pick out the models and everything. So I ended up losing a lot of guitars there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A lot of I gave her some of the more expensive ones because, to my way of thinking, I would rather have 10 $150 guitars than one $1,500 guitar, because one $1,500 guitar, I'm only going to get a certain vibe out of it. But 10 guitars, I guarantee you, out of 10 guitars that I buy, at least 4 or 5 are going to be real killer guitars,
Yeah, especially once you fix them up.
Yeah. I always make them stage worthy. That's the only way I'll keep them. Otherwise, I'll just part it out or something and sell it.
Anybody who influences your playing that people might be surprised to hear? I was surprised to hear Jerry Garcia. But really, I shouldn't be, because he's really, a lot of his stuff was early stuff, especially was even later, it was bluegrass sort of guitar stuff.
Well, it's the Hellecasters. I think, to me, Jerry is the countryest of the three of us because he's been there a lot. John is all over the place with his stuff. And I kind of came originally from the blues section of town, and by way of country. And what we enjoyed about the Hellecasters was we got to play whatever style we wanted to play. We all can play in a jazzy style, or we can play rock, we can play blues, country, even bluegrass type thing. And so we all just embraced a lot of different styles. I forget what the question was. But
was any players that influenced you that people be surprised to hear?
Yeah, and Peter Frampton. Peter Frampton was a profound influence on me. Garcia, Peter Frampton. There was a group in New York called the Blues Project. Danny Kalb was a huge influence on me early on. And I can hear his influence in my playing now. I do a lot of open string type of pull-offs and things that I can trace directly to him. Also Mike Bloomfield. Those are my core influencers. Those people influence me more than anybody else.
Man, I could listen to Mike Bloomfield play for hours and hours. I mean, he's just, and you never hear the same lick twice. That's what's amazing.
And he never understood the magic. He, when he was playing live, there's the Al Cooper and the
Super Sessions
thing. He's like apologizing to the audience. Like,
I know.
He's basically saying, I don't understand why y'all are here, why this is so fascinating, but this is how the band started and this and that. And then he ends with, well, that's just where it's at.
Yeah, right. Al spoke to Steven and Steven spoke to me. Yeah, he has that whole pitch in there. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What a great record, man.
It is a great record. And to this day, that Paul Simon tune, Slow Down.
Oh,
fast.
Man, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna write that down. Yeah.
That song, when Mike Bloomfield comes in with the solo, it's like, whoa! It's like, man, you can really feel he's in the zone, and that's the way I gauge players. How much of the time are you in the zone when you're playing? And he could really get in the zone. And he never understood why people really liked just him noodling around, like on the Super Session thing. He thought the Super Session recordings was a joke. Why would anybody want to buy this? And he never understood it. And I think that's what eventually led him to his downfall to heroin use and stuff. So
it's funny. I'm interviewing Joe Louis Walker later this week, and those guys were roommates. So I'm going to ask him a couple of questions about Bloomfield because I'm curious about.
Quiz him very well on.
Do you have a specific question? Tell me. I'll ask him if you can think of something.
There's nothing that comes to mind except maybe why did he leave Paul Butterfield Blues Band? Like, that would be a question I would ask.
I will ask him that.
Just because that was such a great. He and Paul Butterfield, that whole band was in the zone for their first two albums.
East West. That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
He's like a different guitar player on there, and in a good way. Like he completely changed the style. And I would like to know what happened between the first album and the second album, which is East West. What happened? What was Michael Bloomfield listening to? Because you could feel his ideas just going into the stratosphere.
Because that first album was kind of like the Purple-ish album, I think, right?
Yeah.
It
has them on a street corner or something, outside, and actually there was an album that was recorded before that isn't nearly as good, and what they decided to do on the album that became their first album is
go
into a club and play the way that they normally play. Go into their favorite club in the daytime, set up mics, and just record it live. And that's kind of what they did. And you can really hear the energy.
I'll ask him.
He had the most driving blues energy I've ever heard. I mean, way drivier than B.B. King or any of the Kings, Albert King and stuff. He just had this incredible energy about him that just once you hear him, you can't forget him.
Well, he probably had the blues more than B.B. and Albert King. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He was probably living that shit in his head more than those guys.
Well, he was not just living it, but he was pushing the limits of it. He was making blues bleed over into jazz even and rock. And I think that's what Peter Frampton did when he was with Humble Pie. That band, Peter Frampton was a jazz guitarist playing in a hard rock band. And when you listen to his stuff, he's very Mixolydian with his phrasings, but they're so musical. And wow, it just first time I heard him play, I had to put on the radio, and I had to just pull the car over, to finish listening to his solo. That's the way I get into some people,
There's this Humble Pie song I listen to all the time. It's called Strange Days. You know the song? It's like 6-7 minutes long. It's from Rock On. What a great long song, man.
I don't think I have any of their studio albums. I'm just going by the live at the film.
I have to get that. You write that down. Dude, this is like a music school for me now. You're telling me I gotta go back and listen to some Bloomfield. I gotta get live at the Fillmore.
It's like doing the Ray Charles song, Hallelujah, and I Love Her So. It's like, it's just that band really, that was a major left turn for me. And I really got into jazz phrasings more listening to him, and that's how, like I said, I learned the Nicolaitan scale, was just listening to his solos, and it made me really reach out and do different fingerings and to try to emulate what he's doing, you know. And he's still a great guitar player, but I don't think he realized how great he was at such an early age. It's just nice that they recorded it live at the Fillmore. You know.
Have you ever met Peter? He lives in Nashville.
No, I never have.
That's surprising. Well, if I interview him, I'll tell him. I'll make sure to call you. Get some questions in.
But I just can't remember. You know.
I'm curious this question with you, man, because you're I really admire how you think. What's your definition of happiness, Will?
My definition of happiness is being in the moment and being okay with where you are in the moment. And really, I think when you're in the moment and you're, it's like you once said, even, I think, happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
Happiness is a choice.
It is.
And the people, you know, I try to make happiness always a choice. And that sounds simplistic, but most people, I think that they just kind of stumble into happiness. Like they're very conditional by the way they live. And it's like, well, I'll be happy when I get a new car or a new house.
If this happens, then, yeah, it's always if.
You know, if my career could take off to this level, then I'd be happy. But you really have to be happy with where you are. And believe it or not, that takes work. You know, you have to work at being happy. It sounds funny to say that, but I think the problems of the world right now is so many people just are unhappy, and they really don't even want to be happy. They just want to stir things up more, and you know, they don't know what happiness looks like. You know, once you know what it looks like, you want to stay in there. It's kind of like when you're in the zone playing. You want to stay in that zone as long as you can, for every moment that you can squeeze out of it. Because when you're in the zone, it's so effortless, and you get so many ideas and everything. And that's the way it is when you're happy. You get, when you're really happy, that's when your best ideas come. Not just on playing guitar, but just in life, you know, about, oh, well, maybe I should do this, you know, take this avenue with licensing my songs, you know, or maybe that will help sell more, you know, so.
Yeah, I say that at the end of every episode. I say happiness is a choice, so choose wisely, because it is so true. And I didn't learn that till later in life. And it was so important to me when I learned it. It made such a major difference in like everything. It was just like I was so much more, I chose to be happy. It was like you said, it's like not very brainy or complicated, but like I made that choice, and then I actively try to implement it all the time, you know, and they profoundly impacted my life, my relationship with my wife, my kids, everything, you know. I just choose to look at things differently now, you know, and it led to being more grateful for things. Not that I was ever ungrateful. I'm not that guy, or definitely not entitled, but it's just nice to be happy, you know?
Yeah. It feels good.
Yeah, it does. Best childhood memory?
Best childhood memory. I think eating watermelon with the family, you know.
That's nice.
Out
man.
on the picnic table in the backyard, you know, just, you know, that's a pretty good memory.
Do you see your brothers and sisters Are they nearby, or are they in Virginia?
We're all spread out, but we had a family reunion last month in June, and so we all got to see each other and hang. So
That's cool, man. Very cool. Tell me something about yourself, Will, that people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Oh, that I still like to listen to musicals, and I love great melodies, and I still sometimes will listen to Barbra Streisand, because when she was in her prime, she had such control of her voice, and I just love listening. I love listening to great music, great melodies, sung by great people. So.
You still have a good sound system? Do you listen to music over headphones now, or do you sit like in a room and listen to music?
Oh, I have some wireless headphones. I have some Sennheiser wireless headphones, and I have like about 6 pair. They're all, I listen to the TV under it. I listen to music. I always record my band on Thursday nights, and I listen to the tapes afterwards, like a coach goes over the video after a game. I like the Monday morning quarterback and say, "Wow, this is really great," or "This idea didn't work here," and stuff. And I get a good sense of it with headphones.
That's cool, man.
But I still have I have a studio, so I have great monitors in there and stuff, Hanoi monitors, and so I love music. And it doesn't matter how it's delivered. The better the fidelity, the better I like it.
Sure, man. Hey, who's had the biggest influence on your life, both musically and personally?
Who, in terms of
person? What particular people?
I would say probably my brother Gaylord, because he kind of introduced guitar into the family, and I would listen to, I absorbed a lot of Lead Belly and old blues stuff, Muddy Waters, as well as the folk boom, Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary, Kingston Trio, and I would say probably my brother Gaylord.
And on the personal side, who's had the biggest influence on you? Or is it Gaylord for both?
Personal side, I would say the getting a divorce. Getting a divorce.
Was that your first and only?
No, it was my second wife, and probably be my last.
No, well, Will, third time's the charm.
Yeah. That's what they say. Yeah.
This is my second and final. And last question is, what's been the biggest change in your personality, Will, over the last 10 years? And how much of this change has been deliberate and how much is just a part of aging?
How much is just a part of aging?
Yeah, and how much is how much of that is a deliberate change, maybe that you did on purpose?
I would say the biggest change I've had is just moving to Asheville and slowing down. I'm getting older. I know what works for me and what doesn't, and I want to keep doing the things that work for me. Give up things that don't work for me. I like ease in my life, and so that's what I'm going after.
Awesome, man. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your time, and I really genuinely enjoyed talking to you. I learned an awful lot, so thank you. And I want to just tell people where they could find you. First of all, you said every Thursday night you got a gig?
Every Thursday night at the Asheville Guitar Bar.
Great. So
Will Ray and the Space Cooties.
Great. Every Thursday night at the Asheville Guitar Bar. Go check out Will. You could also read his column in Premier Guitar Magazine every other month. It's called Bottom Feeder. That's where he talks about the deals that he's picking up here and there. So you could probably learn a hell of a lot on that. And also, I was surprised to hear you can actually get lessons from Will. He does Skype lessons. And so if you want to get with one of the greatest guitar players of our generation, go to willray.biz. It's Will, WILLRAY.biz, and you can contact him on there. Man, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and it's really been good. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. I want to thank Will Ray very much for spending time with us. And go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list. And if you want to send in questions, that's the place to do it, because I send out an email every 2 weeks to ask for questions. And here we go. Remember, most important, happiness is a choice. So be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.